Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the cold metal chair, her hands folded on the smooth table surface. Around her, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with alien voices, speaking in dozens of languages. The massive dome above them showed the stars beyond. Nexus Prime, but Sarah's mind was not on the beauty of space. She was thinking about home. She was thinking about Earth and the secret it had kept for 50 years. The Zephyrian representative stood tall at the center of the room. His blue skin glowed under the bright lights, and his forearms moved as he spoke. Zektar was his name, and he was angry. Very angry. The human colonies must be given to the Zephyrian Empire, Zektar said, his voice booming through the chamber. New Geneva, Haven's Rest, and Prosperity Station. These worlds belong to us now. The humans can leave or they can face the consequences. Sarah watched the other aliens in the room. The lizard-like Krillians nodded their approval. They loved war and conquest. The floating Vorten delegates whispered among themselves. There, tentacles moving like underwater plants. Even the peaceful Etherians seemed worried. They all thought the same thing. Humans were weak. For 50 years, humanity had played this role perfectly. They were the traders, the negotiators, the ones who carried goods between worlds and made deals. Human ships were slow and clumsy compared to alien vessels. Human weapons were simple projectile launchers and basic energy beams. Human soldiers were soft creatures who needed suits to survive in space. At least that's what everyone believed. Sarah stood up slowly. The room grew quiet. Even Zektar stopped speaking to look at her. She was small compared to most aliens in the room, barely reaching the chest of the shortest Krillian. Her brown hair was tied back simply, and she wore the plain gray uniform of the Human Diplomatic Corps. The colonies you speak of are home to over 10 million humans, Sarah said. Her voice was calm and clear. They have been there for 30 years. They have built cities, farms, and schools. These are not empty worlds to be given away. Zektar's forearms spread wide. Humans are weak. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are toys. You have no real military force. The Zephyrian Empire has 1,000 warships. What do humans have? Trading vessels and cargo haulers. Laughter filled the chamber. The Krillians slammed their clawed hands on their tables. The Vorthons made clicking sounds that passed for amusement in their culture. Even some of the smaller species that usually stayed quiet were chuckling. Sarah smiled. It was a small, sad smile that none of the aliens understood. If only they knew what was hidden in the cargo holds of those trading vessels. If only they knew what those slow human ships really were underneath their false hulls. We are a peaceful people, Sarah said. We prefer trade to war, but we will not abandon our colonies. Then you will watch them burn, Zektar replied. The Zephyrian fleet will move in 7 days. Your people can leave, or they can die with their worlds. The session ended with the usual ceremony. Aliens filed out in their groups, speaking in Saisi, their own languages. Sarah remained seated, waiting until the chamber was almost empty. Then she touched the small device hidden under her jacket collar. Admiral, she whispered so quietly that only the hidden transmitter could pick up her voice. I heard everything, Ambassador, came the reply in her earpiece. The voice belonged to Admiral Marcus Rivera, though no one in the galaxy knew his real rank. To the rest of the universe, he was Captain Rivera, master of the cargo vessel Wandering. Star, are we ready? Sarah asked. We've been ready for 50 years, Marcus replied. The question is, are they ready for us? 3,000 light-years away? The Wandering Star drifted through space like any other cargo ship. Its hull was painted with rust stains and meteor damage that made it look old and harmless. Inside, the crew moved with the casual efficiency of experienced merchants. They loaded and unloaded containers, ran maintenance checks, and complained about the poor pay just like any civilian crew would do. But if someone could see through the ship's disguised outer hull, they would discover something very different. The Wandering Star was actually the CNS Retribution, humanity's newest and most powerful dreadnought. Its true weapons were hidden behind fake cargo containers. Its real engines were concealed within the framework of what looked like old-fashioned chemical thrusters. Its armor was disguised to look like simple steel plating. but it could withstand the impact of antimatter warheads. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood in what appeared to be the ship's simple bridge. To any outside observer, it looked like the control room of a basic freighter. But Marcus could see the hidden displays that showed him the real status of his ship. He could access weapons systems that the galaxy had never seen before. He commanded a crew of 300 highly trained military personnel who had spent years pretending to be civilian traders. "Status report," Marcus said quietly. "All systems green, Admiral," replied Commander Lisa Park, his first officer. To the universe, she was just the ship's navigator. In reality, she was one of the most experienced combat officers in human space. "The fleet is in position." Marcus nodded. Around them, scattered across dozens of star systems, more than 200 ships just like theirs waited. Each one looked like a civilian vessel. Each one was actually a warship in disguise. Cargo haulers were really troop transports. Mining ships were actually mobile weapons platforms. Research vessels were command and control centers. "And the installations?" Marcus asked. "Ready for activation," Park replied. "All 47 bases are fully operational." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. For 50 years, humanity had been building those bases. Every time they established a mining operation on some distant asteroid, they were actually constructing a hidden military facility. Every research station they put in orbit around gas giants was really a weapons platform. Every communication relay they placed at jump points was actually a sensor array and missile launcher. The aliens thought humans were industrious but harmless. They saw humans digging mines and building stations, and approved of their work ethic. They never suspected that humanity was militarizing every system they touched. "Contact Fleet Command," Marcus ordered. "Tell Admiral Chen Wei that Ambassador Chen has given us the word. Operation Revelation begins in 6 days." On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Chen Wei received the message. She was Sarah's older sister, though few people knew of the connection. While Sarah had spent decades learning alien languages and cultures, Chen Wei had been preparing for war. The Earth Defense Command Center looked like something from humanity's ancient past and distant future combined. The walls were carved from living rock, but they held displays showing every corner of human space. Thousands of officers worked at stations that monitored ships, bases, and installations across 50 star systems. "Admiral," her aide said, approaching with a data pad, "the Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing their battle fleet. Intelligence says they're pulling ships from 5 sectors to build an attack force." Chen Wei studied the numbers. The Zephyrians were bringing 300 warships to attack the human colonies. It was a massive force by alien standards. Most species would surrender rather than face such overwhelming power. Most species were not human. "How many ships are they expecting us to have?" Chen Wei asked. "Based on their intelligence reports, they think we have maybe 50 civilian vessels that could be converted to fight," her aide replied. "They're not taking any chances, though. 300 to 50 are good odds for them." Chen Wei walked to the main display screen. It showed human space as the aliens saw it, a small collection of peaceful colonies connected by trade routes. But with a gesture, she changed the view. The real human presence appeared on the screen like a hidden constellation coming into view. The truth was staggering. Humanity had not just 50 ships, they had over 800 fully operational warships hidden throughout the galaxy. They didn't just have 12 colonies. They had military installations in 47 star systems. They weren't just traders and miners. They were the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen, and no one knew it existed. "Begin Phase 1, Chen Wei ordered. "Send the activation codes to all sleeper installations. It's time to wake up the fleet." Across human space, the transformation began. On the mining station orbiting Kepler 442b, workers received coded messages that changed everything. The station's outer shell split apart like a flower opening, revealing the weapons and armor that had been hidden inside for 20 years. What had looked like a simple mining facility was actually a fortress capable of defending an entire star system. On the cargo ship Steady Progress, Captain Janet Torres looked at the message from Fleet Command and smiled. She had been hauling supplies between colonies for 15 years, watching alien ships ignore her completely. Now she pressed a hidden button on her command chair, and her ship began to change. The false outer hull peeled away in sections, revealing the sleek lines of a heavy cruiser. The fake cargo containers opened to show missile launchers and energy weapons. The civilian crew quarters folded back to reveal marine barracks and fighter bays. In 10 minutes, the steady progress had become the CNS Retribution's hammer, a ship capable of destroying anything in its path. The same transformation happened on 200 ships throughout the galaxy. Freighters became destroyers, mining vessels became battle cruisers. Research ships became carriers launching squadrons of fighters that had been disguised as survey drones. But the ships were only part of humanity's secret. The real surprise was what they had built on the ground. On the human colony of New Geneva, the first world the Zephyrians planned to attack, Governor Patricia Walsh stood in her office looking out at the city below. It looked peaceful enough: houses, schools, farms, and the spaceport where civilian ships landed daily. But Patricia knew what lay beneath. Every human colony had been built with defense in mind. The beautiful parks were actually camouflaged missile sites. The pleasant residential districts had underground bunker networks that could shelter the entire population. The power plants were designed to overload and create massive electromagnetic pulses that would disable enemy ships. Even the farms were part of the defense system, growing food that could last for years under siege. "Governor," her aide said, entering the office, "we've received the activation order from Fleet Command." "Good," Patricia replied. "Signal all department heads. Tell them it's time for the citizens to learn what we've really been building here." The colonists had always known their worlds might be attacked someday. That's why every human citizen over the age of 16 had basic military training. That's why every city had hidden weapons storage. That's why every family had emergency plans that could put them in defensive positions within an hour. What the colonists didn't know was how extensive their defenses really were. They were about to find out. As word spread through the colonies, a different kind of transformation began. Civilian authorities revealed their military ranks. Teachers and farmers and shop owners opened hidden supply caches and put on uniforms. Children who had thought they were playing games during their emergency drills realized they had been learning real military procedures. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest deception had not been hiding their weapons or their ships. It had been hiding their nature. Every human was a potential soldier. Every colony was a fortress. Every peaceful trader was a warrior waiting for the signal to fight. In 6 days, the Zephyrian Empire would attack what they thought were defenseless human settlements. Instead, they would find themselves facing the largest and most prepared military force the galaxy had ever seen. But first, humanity had to finish waking up from 50 years of pretending to sleep. The deception of peace was ending. Soon, the galaxy would see what humans really were when they chose to stop hiding their true nature. The moment was coming when humanity would reveal their true military force. And when that happened, the galaxy would tremble in silence. The attack on New Geneva came exactly when the Zephyrians said it would. Fleet Commander Vexrath led 60 warships through the jump point at the edge of the system, expecting to find a few human cargo vessels and maybe some old defensive satellites. What he found instead changed everything. The galaxy thought they knew about humanity. The first sign that something was wrong came from his sensor officer. "Commander, I'm reading strange energy signatures from the human ships in the system." Vexrath looked at the display screen. There were 12 human vessels scattered throughout New Geneva's orbital space. They looked like the usual collection of freighters and passenger ships that humans used for trade. Nothing threatening. "Strange how?" he asked. "The power readings are much higher than they should be," the sensor officer replied. "And their hull configurations are changing." Before Vexrath could respond, the human ships began to transform. Hull plates slid apart and fell away like discarded clothing. Fake cargo containers opened to reveal weapon systems. Engine sections extended and showed their true power. In minutes, what had looked like a small collection of civilian vessels had become a battle fleet. "Impossible," Vexrath whispered. The lead human ship, which had been called the Wandering Star on their identification transponder, now broadcast a different signal. CNS Retribution. As Vexrath watched, the ship's true form was revealed. It was massive, easily twice the size it had appeared to be. Weapons ports opened along its hull like eyes opening in the dark. The ship that had looked like a simple cargo hauler was actually larger than his own flagship. "All ships battle formation," Vexrath ordered. "Prepare to engage the human fleet." But as his ships moved into their attack positions, more surprises appeared. The asteroid mining station that had been quietly operating in the system's belt suddenly lit up with energy. What they had thought was a simple mining platform was actually a fortress bristling with weapons. It was built into one of the largest asteroids in the belt, and now that asteroid was moving toward his fleet under its own power. "Commander," his navigation officer called out. "The mining station is not a station. It's a mobile weapons platform." More signals appeared on the sensors. Human ships were coming from everywhere. From behind moons, from within the asteroid belt, from positions they couldn't have reached unless they had been hiding there for months. What had looked like 12 civilian vessels was actually a fleet of 47 warships that had been camouflaged and waiting. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the Zephyrian fleet realize their mistake. For 50 years, he had waited for this moment. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for the day when they would have to reveal their true nature to the galaxy. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported, "all ships are ready to engage. The Zephyrians have stopped advancing. I think they're trying to figure out what they're looking at." Marcus nodded. "Open a communication channel to the Zephyrian commander." The main screen flickered and showed Vexrath's blue face. The Zephyrian's four eyes were wide with shock and confusion. "What is this?" he demanded. "Where did these ships come from?" "The same place they've always been, Commander Vexrath," Marcus replied calmly. "You just weren't looking hard enough to see them." "This is impossible. Human ships are slow and weak. Your weapons are primitive." Marcus smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "You're about to learn that we've been lying to you for 50 years. Did you really think a species could spread across 50 star systems using cargo haulers and good intentions?" Before Vexrath could respond, Marcus gave the order that would change galactic history. "All ships, weapons free. Show them what humans really are." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human ships moved with a precision and coordination that seemed impossible. They used the gravity of planets and moons to slingshot themselves at incredible speeds. They hid behind asteroids and emerged at exactly the right moment to strike. They fought like predators that had been studying their prey for decades. The Zephyrian ships were built for straightforward combat, powerful weapons and heavy armor meeting in direct conflict. But the humans didn't fight that way. They struck from unexpected angles and disappeared before the Zephyrians could respond. They used the environment of the star system like a weapon, drawing enemy ships into asteroid fields where they could be trapped and destroyed. Commander Vexrath watched, his fleet being torn apart by tactics he didn't understand. "How are they moving like that?" he shouted at his tactical officer. "No ship can maneuver that way." But human ships could, because they had been designed by a species that had learned warfare on a world that tried to kill them every day. Earth had taught humans to use every advantage, to turn weakness into strength, to survive by being smarter and more adaptable than anything they faced. The Retribution demonstrated this perfectly. Instead of trading shots with Zephyrian battleships, it used its superior maneuverability to get behind them. Its weapons were not just energy beams and missiles. They were gravitational disruptors that could tear a ship apart from the inside out. They were quantum torpedoes that existed in several dimensions at once and couldn't be stopped by normal shields. In 30 minutes, the Zephyrian attack fleet was destroyed. 60 warships that had come to conquer a human colony were reduced to debris and emergency escape pods. Not a single human ship was lost, but the revelation at New Geneva was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Every human mining operation revealed itself as a military base. Every research station powered up weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. The archaeological expedition in the Kepler sector became Forward Operating Base Kepler, a massive installation that had been disguised as ruins for 20 years. The most shocking revelation came at the neutron star called Charybdis. For 15 years, humans had maintained a research station in orbit around the collapsed star, claiming they were studying its unique properties. Alien scientists had thought it was a waste of time. Neutron stars were well understood, and the radiation around Charybdis made it dangerous to approach. Now the research station revealed its true nature. It was a weapons platform that used the neutron star's incredible gravitational field as a power source. When Zephyrian reinforcement fleets tried to jump through the Charybdis system, they found their ships caught in artificial gravity wells that could crush a battleship like an empty can. The weapons fired beams of concentrated gravitational force that could bend space-time itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the supposed head of the Charybdis research project, stood in the station's command center watching Zephyrian ships being pulled apart by forces they couldn't understand or escape. For 15 years, she had published papers about neutron star physics while secretly building the most powerful weapon in known space. "Gravitational torpedo ready," her weapons officer reported. "Fire," Elena ordered. The torpedo was invisible to normal sensors. It was a bubble of twisted space-time that moved at nearly the speed of light. When it reached the Zephyrian flagship, it didn't explode in any conventional sense. Instead, it created a gravity well so intense that the ship was compressed into a sphere less than a meter across in the space of microseconds. The other Zephyrian ships fled immediately. News of the defeat spread through galactic communication networks faster than the battles themselves. Species that had dismissed humans as weak traders suddenly realized they had been sharing the galaxy with predators. The slow human expansion across 50 star systems had not been the gradual spread of peaceful colonists. It had been a carefully planned military operation that had taken half a century to complete. On the Krillian homeworld, War Marshal Tekvar studied battle recordings with growing amazement and fear. The Krillians prided themselves on being the galaxy's greatest warriors. They had conquered dozens of systems through pure military might. But watching human tactics was like seeing a completely different approach to warfare. "They don't fight with honor," observed Sub-Marshal Kretok. "They use deception and trickery." Tekvar shook his massive reptilian head. "They fight to win. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose battles. Humans cannot afford to lose, so they have learned to fight in ways we never considered." The recording showed human ships using asteroid fields like three-dimensional mazes, appearing and disappearing in ways that seemed to violate the laws of physics. They showed human weapons that worked on principles the galaxy's scientists didn't understand. Most disturbing of all, they showed a level of coordination between human forces that suggested they had been planning these battles for decades. "How long have they been preparing for this?" Kretok asked. "Since the day they joined the Galactic Council," Tekvar replied grimly. "Maybe longer. I think we have been studying the wrong species, Sub-Marshal. We thought the humans were sheep, but they are wolves. Very patient wolves." On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, all talking at once in their various languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the flood of frightened voices. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in her usual seat, listening to the chaos around her. Species that had ignored humans for 50 years were now demanding explanations. The Vorthan Confederacy wanted to know how many ships humanity really had. The Etherian Collective was asking about defensive treaties. Even the proud Stellar Republic was quietly inquiring about trade agreements. Council Speaker Morden, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council thousands of years ago, finally called for order. "Ambassador Chen," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The Council demands answers. How long has humanity been deceiving us about your military capabilities?" Sarah stood slowly. She looked around the chamber at dozens of alien faces, all staring at her with mixtures of fear, anger, and respect that had never been there before. "We have never lied to this council," she said clearly. "We told you we were a peaceful people. We are. We told you we preferred trade to war. We do. We told you we wanted to coexist with all species in harmony. That is still true." "But your ships," shouted the Zephyrian representative who had replaced Zektar. Your weapons, your hidden bases." "We told you we would defend ourselves," Sarah replied. "Did you think we were bluffing?" The chamber fell silent. For 50 years, humanity had been saying exactly that. They had repeatedly stated that they would not be driven from their homes, that they would protect their colonies, that they valued peace but would fight if necessary. The galaxy had chosen to hear only the parts about peace and trade. They had ignored the warnings about human determination and the willingness to fight. Speaker Morden spoke into the silence. "What does humanity want now?" Sarah looked at him, steadily. "The same thing we have always wanted. To be left alone to live our lives in peace, but now you know the price of disturbing that peace." The message was clear. Humanity had revealed their true strength not to conquer, but to ensure they would never again be threatened. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, so that no one would make the mistake of thinking humans were easy prey. As the session ended and aliens filed out of the chamber, many of them were looking at Sarah Chen with new eyes. She was no longer just the representative of a minor trading species. She was the ambassador of a military power that had been hiding in plain sight for half a century. The silent fleet had awakened and the galaxy would never be the same. War Marshal Tekvar had seen battle recordings from 100 different species across 2 centuries of conflict. He had studied the combat tactics of the Vorthan Confederacy with their swarm attacks. He had analyzed the methodical siege warfare of the Stellar Republic. He had even learned from the chaotic but effective raids of the pirate clans that operated in the outer systems. But watching the humans fight was like discovering a completely new form of warfare. The Krillian sat in his private study aboard the battleship Razor's Edge, playing the same battle recording for the 20th time. On the screen, human ships moved through the new Geneva system like predators that had been born in space. They didn't just fight, they hunted. "Computer, slow the playback to quarter speed," he commanded. The recording showed a human cruiser, one that had been disguised as a mining ship until the battle began, approaching a Zephyrian destroyer. The Zephyrian ship was larger and more heavily armed, but it was being led into a trap so subtle that Tekvar had missed it the first dozen times he watched. The human ship was using the gravity field of New Geneva's largest moon to alter its trajectory in ways that looked random but were actually perfectly calculated. The Zephyrian captain thought he was chasing a fleeing enemy. Instead, he was being positioned exactly where the humans wanted him. When the trap was sprung, 3 more human ships appeared from behind the moon's shadow. They had been waiting there, engines powered down, invisible to sensors. The Zephyrian destroyer was destroyed in seconds, caught in a crossfire it couldn't escape. "Magnificent," Tekvar whispered. His aide, Sub-Marshal Kretok, looked up from his own study pad. "Marshal, did you say something?" "The humans," Tekvar replied. "Watch this recording, Kretok. Tell me what you see." The younger Krillian studied the screen as the recording played again. "I see human ships using deception and ambush tactics. Dishonorable combat." Tekvar's scales clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. "You see with Krillian eyes, Sub-Marshal. We value direct confrontation, warrior against warrior. But look at the results. 4 human ships destroyed a Zephyrian destroyer with no losses. How many Krillian ships would we lose in the same engagement?" Kretok considered this. "Fighting with honor? Probably 2 ships lost, maybe 3 to achieve the same result." "Exactly." Tekvar paused the recording and highlighted the tactical display. "The humans do not fight for honor. They fight to win, and they are very, very good at winning." The War Marshal had requested every piece of battle data the Krillian intelligence services could gather. What he found painted a picture of human warfare that was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans didn't just defeat their enemies. They studied them, predicted their behavior, and turned their strengths into weaknesses. "Look at this engagement in the Tau Ceti system," Tekvar said, bringing up another recording. "The Zephyrians sent a fast attack squadron of 30 ships to strike a human supply convoy. Standard raid tactics. Hit hard and fast, destroy the cargo vessels, retreat before reinforcements arrive." The recording showed the Zephyrian ships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. ready to tear apart what they expected to be defenseless human freighters. Instead, they found the convoy formation falling apart in apparent panic, with cargo ships scattering in all directions. The Zephyrian commander thought he had achieved perfect surprise. Thekvar continued. His ships spread out to chase down individual cargo vessels. Classic pursuit formation. Kretok watched as the Zephyrian ships separated to hunt down the fleeing humans. They fell for a trap. A beautiful trap, Thekvar agreed. The human cargo ships were not running away. They were moving into predetermined positions. When the Zephyrians were spread out and isolated from each other, the cargo vessels revealed their true nature. The supposed cargo ships shed their false hulls and became warships. But more importantly, they had led the Zephyrian raiders into a kill zone that had been prepared in advance. Hidden weapon platforms powered up throughout the system. Mines that had been disguised as space debris activated. The Zephyrian squadron found itself trapped in a carefully prepared killing field. 30 Zephyrian ships destroyed, Thekvar said. 0 human losses. The entire battle lasted less than 20 minutes. Kretok stared at the recording in amazement. How did they know the attack was coming? That is the most disturbing part, Thekvar replied. I believe they didn't know. I believe they prepared for this exact scenario months or even years in advance, then waited for someone to be foolish enough to trigger the trap. The War Marshal brought up a tactical analysis that showed human defensive positions throughout their territory. Every supply convoy traveled through systems that had been militarized in secret. Every trade route was protected by hidden weapon platforms and disguised warships. Every human settlement was surrounded by defenses that most species wouldn't build even around their homeworlds. They have turned their entire civilization into a weapon, Thekvar observed. Every merchant is a potential warrior. Every cargo ship is a potential warship. Every colony is a fortress. How does one fight an enemy like that? The question troubled him more than he wanted to admit. The Krillian hegemony had conquered half a sector through superior firepower and warrior courage. But human tactics made traditional warfare seem primitive and wasteful. They fought with their minds as much as their weapons, and their minds were clearly very dangerous things. On the human colony of Haven's Rest, Governor Michael Torres stood in what looked like the colony's emergency operations center. To visiting dignitaries and trade representatives, this room appeared to be a simple disaster response facility. It had displays showing weather patterns, supply levels, and civilian population centers. But behind the false walls and beneath the innocent-looking equipment, Haven's Rest contained one of the most sophisticated military command centers in human space. Governor Torres was not just a colonial administrator. He was General Torres, a veteran of humanity's secret military expansion who had been planning the defense of Haven's Rest for 15 years. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from Zephyrian military units across 3 systems. They're asking for terms. Torres studied the tactical displays that showed the real situation throughout the region. What had started as Zephyrian attacks on 3 human colonies had become a complete rout. Human forces were systematically destroying every Zephyrian military asset they could find, and they were doing it with a level of coordination that shocked even their enemies. What kind of terms are they requesting? Torres asked. Full withdrawal from human space, recognition of human territorial claims, and... The communications officer paused. They are offering to share their military technology in exchange for a ceasefire. Torres almost smiled. Rejected. They attacked our civilians, they threatened our homes. The price for that is not technological data. It's complete surrender. The Zephyrians were learning what happened when you threatened humanity's children. Human parents did not negotiate with those who would harm their families. They eliminated the threat permanently. But Torres knew that military victory was only part of the message humanity was sending to the galaxy. The real lesson was in how they fought. Human warfare was not just about destroying enemies, it was about psychological impact. They wanted every potential aggressor to understand exactly what would happen if they chose to threaten human colonies. Sir, his tactical officer called out, the Zephyrian Reserve Fleet is requesting permission to retrieve survivors from their destroyed ships. Granted, Torres replied immediately. and make sure they get a clear view of our defenses when they come to collect their people. I want them to see exactly what they were fighting against. This was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of human warfare. Their mercy was as calculated as their violence. They allowed enemies to survive and escape, but only so those survivors could spread word of what human military forces were really capable of. Every rescued Zephyrian pilot would return home with stories of human ships that appeared from nowhere, of weapons that defied understanding, of defensive systems that turned entire star systems into fortresses. The psychological warfare was perhaps more effective than the physical destruction. Fear, Torres knew, was a weapon that never needed reloading. On Earth, Admiral Chen Wei monitored the battles from the Deep Space Command Center. The massive screens around her showed human forces engaging Zephyrian units across 12 star systems. Each engagement followed the same pattern: apparent human weakness, followed by devastating revelation of hidden strength. Admiral, her intelligence chief reported, "We're receiving communications intercepts from Krillian, Vorthon, and Stellar Republic forces. They're all trying to analyze our tactics." "What are they concluding?" Chen Wei asked. "The Krillians are impressed but disturbed by our lack of honorable combat. The Vorthons are trying to calculate how many ships we really have. The Stellar Republic is quietly updating their diplomatic protocols regarding humanity." Chen Wei nodded. This was exactly what humanity had planned. The revelation of their true military capacity was not meant just to defeat the Zephyrians. It was meant to educate the entire galaxy about the price of threatening human interests. And the smaller species? The Etherian Collective has requested a formal defense alliance. The Kepler Federation is asking about trade agreements for human military technology. The Outer Rim Trading Company wants to hire human ships as convoy escorts. Perfect. The galaxy was learning that humans were not victims to be preyed upon. They were powerful allies to be courted, and dangerous enemies to be avoided. Admiral, her strategic planning officer, approached with a data pad. "We have a problem. The Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing their Grand Armada. Over 1,000 ships from 5 sectors. They're not surrendering. They're escalating." Chen Wei looked at the intelligence reports. The Zephyrian Empire's pride had been wounded by their defeats, and they were responding the only way they knew how, with overwhelming force. Every warship they could gather was being sent to crush humanity once and for all. "How long until they reach our space?" she asked. 72 hours, Admiral. They're coming directly for Earth." Chen Wei smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Then they're going to learn the most important lesson about human warfare. We don't just hide our ships and bases from our enemies. We hide our homeworld's defenses too. She turned to her communications chief. "Send a message to all human forces throughout the galaxy. Tell them Operation Homecoming is now active. It's time to show the Zephyrians what Earth looks like when it stops pretending to be a peaceful world." The Zephyrians thought they were bringing overwhelming force to attack a lightly defended planet. They had no idea they were about to assault the most heavily fortified world in galactic history. Earth had been preparing for this moment since the day humanity first left their home system. The galaxy was about to witness the ultimate demonstration of human military art. And when it was over, no species would ever again mistake human patience for human weakness. Supreme Commander Zarthek stood on the command bridge of the massive battleship Infinite Glory, watching his fleet prepare for the final assault on Earth. Around him stretched the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, over 1,000 warships from the Zephyrian Empire's 5 sectors. Battleships the size of cities floated alongside swift destroyers and massive carriers loaded with fighter craft. This was the Grand Armada, the pride of Zephyrian military might. No force in the galaxy could stand against it, certainly not the humans, despite their recent tricks and surprises. "Supreme Commander," his tactical officer reported, "all fleet units are in position at the edge of the Sol system. We are ready to begin the attack on the human homeworld." Zarthek nodded, his forearms clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical display. Earth floated on the screen like a small blue-green jewel, looking peaceful and defenseless. Few orbital stations surrounded it, along with what appeared to be a modest collection of human ships, maybe 50 vessels total, nothing that could threaten his Grand Armada. The humans' tricks will not save them here, he declared to his bridge crew. They may have hidden warships throughout their territory, but this is their homeworld. There is nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Today we end the human problem forever. His communication officer spoke up. Supreme Commander, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it on the main screen, Zarthek commanded. The display flickered and showed a human woman, in military uniform. She appeared to be middle-aged, with graying hair and calm eyes that showed no fear despite facing the largest fleet in galactic history. The nameplate on her uniform read, Admiral Chen Wei. Supreme Commander Zarthek, she said, in perfect Zephyrian. I am Admiral Chen Wei, Commander of Earth Defense Forces. You have brought an impressive fleet to our system. I have brought your destruction, human, Zarthek replied. Surrender now and we may allow some of your people to survive as slaves. Continue to resist, and we will burn your world to ash. Admiral Chen Wei smiled. It was a cold expression that made Zarthek uncomfortable for reasons he couldn't identify. Supreme Commander, before you begin your attack, I want to show you something. I think you should understand what you're really fighting against. Your words cannot change the outcome of this battle, Zarthek said dismissively. Words? No, probably not. But maybe a demonstration will help. Chen Wei gestured to someone off-screen. Computer, begin Earth Defense Network revelation sequence. On Zarthek's tactical display, new contacts began appearing throughout the Sol system. At first it was just a few additional ships powering up from what had looked like empty space. Then more contacts appeared. And more. What is this? Zarthek demanded of his sensor officer. Supreme Commander, I don't understand these readings. New ships are appearing everywhere. They were completely hidden from our sensors until now. The truth was staggering. What had looked like 50 human ships defending Earth was actually over 300 fully operational warships. They had been hiding using stealth technology that made them invisible to Zephyrian sensors. But that was only the beginning. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter began to light up with energy signatures. What the Zephyrians had assumed were ordinary chunks of rock were actually massive weapons platforms, each one the size of a moon and armed with firepower that dwarfed anything in Zarthek's fleet. Impossible, he whispered. But the revelations continued. The planet Mars itself began to change, its surface opening in dozens of locations to reveal missile silos and energy weapons. The supposedly dead world had been hollowed out and converted into a fortress. Even Jupiter's moons were showing energy signatures. They too had been militarized. Then the most shocking revelation came. Earth's moon began to split apart like an opening flower, revealing that it had been completely hollowed out and rebuilt. Inside was a construction facility the size of a planet, filled with ships under construction, manufacturing equipment, and weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Dear ancestors, Zarthek breathed, the entire system is a fortress. Not just a fortress, Supreme Commander. Admiral Chen Wei's voice came from the screen. It's the most heavily defended system in galactic history. We've been preparing for this day since we first left Earth centuries ago. Every human who ever looked up at the stars knew that someday, someone would try to take our home from us. Zarthek's hands shook as he watched his tactical display fill with defensive installations. The humans hadn't just built normal defenses around their homeworld. They had turned the entire Sol system into a weapon. The sun itself showed artificial structures, massive solar collection arrays that could focus stellar energy into beams, capable of destroying entire fleets. How? He managed to ask. The same way we hid our ships throughout the galaxy, Chen Wei replied. We worked for centuries, little by little, always building, always preparing. Every asteroid we mined, every moon we surveyed, every space station we constructed, it was all part of the plan to defend our home. On the bridge of the infinite glory, alarm signals began to sound. Zarthek's fleet was surrounded by defensive systems that outgunned them 10-1. Worse, they were trapped. The same stealth technology that had hidden the human defenses was now being used to create artificial gravity fields that prevented his ships from jumping to hyperspace. This is your last chance to surrender, Supreme Commander. Admiral Chen Wei said. Order your fleet to power down weapons and prepare to be taken into custody. Your people will be treated well as prisoners of war. Zarthek's pride flared. The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to inferior species. All ships, attack formation, destroy the human homeworld. The battle that followed became known as the Sol Massacre, though historians would argue for centuries about whether it could properly be called a battle at all. Zarthek's 1,000-ship fleet attacked Earth with everything they had. Energy weapons that could crack continents, missiles that could shatter moons, fighter craft that swarmed like angry insects. None of it mattered. The human defenses activated, in sequence, revealing technologies that most species had thought impossible. The weaponized asteroids fired gravitational disruptors that crushed Zephyrian ships like tin cans. Mars launched missiles that existed in several dimensions at once and couldn't be intercepted by conventional defenses. The Moon Fortress unleashed swarms of drone fighters that moved too fast for organic pilots to follow. But the most devastating weapon was the one that came from Earth's sun itself. The solar collection arrays focused stellar energy into coherent beams that struck with the power of a star. Zephyrian battleships simply vanished when hit by the solar lances, converted instantly from matter to energy. Admiral Chen Wei watched the destruction from Earth's primary command center, deep beneath the planet's surface. The facility had been carved from living rock centuries ago, designed to coordinate the defense of humanity's birth world. Around her, thousands of officers monitored every aspect of the battle. Ma'am, her tactical officer reported, the Zephyrian fleet is down to 400 ships. They're trying to retreat, but the gravity anchors are holding them in place. Chen Wei studied the battle display. The Sol Defense Network was performing exactly as designed, systematically destroying an invasion fleet while taking minimal damage in return. But she took no pleasure in the slaughter. This wasn't about revenge, it was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Open a channel to all Zephyrian ships, she ordered. Her communication across all frequencies reached every surviving Zephyrian vessel. This is Admiral Chen Wei. You attacked our colonies, you threatened our families. You came to our home with the intention of committing genocide against our people. Now you see the price of that decision. On the infinite glory, Supreme Commander Zarthek watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by defenses he couldn't understand or counter. Ships that had taken decades to build were being destroyed in seconds. The pride of Zephyrian civilization was burning in the void around Earth. Supreme Commander, his communication officer reported, his voice shaking with fear. We're receiving surrender requests from our own ships. Half the fleet is asking permission to abandon the attack. Zarthek looked at the tactical display. 2/3 of his Grand Armada was already destroyed, and the human defenses showed no signs of weakening. If anything, they seemed to be getting stronger as more weapon systems came online. All ships, he broadcast on the fleet command frequency, retreat to hyperspace jump points. We cannot, Supreme Commander, his navigation officer replied. The humans have created artificial gravity fields throughout the system. Our jump drives are being interfered with. They were trapped and being systematically destroyed by defenses that had been centuries in the making. Zarthek realized with growing horror that this had always been humanity's plan. They had never intended to meet threats in deep space. They had intended to lure their enemies to Earth, where they could be destroyed completely. Supreme Commander, came Admiral Chen Wei's voice over the communication system, I'm going to give you one more chance. Order your remaining ships to surrender and your people will live. Continue fighting and I will activate the final phase of Sol's defenses. You will not want to see what that involves. Zarthek looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. These were warriors who had served the Zephyrian Empire faithfully for decades. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle against an enemy they had never truly understood. All ships, he said quietly into his communicator, power down weapons and prepare for surrender. The battle is over, but the defeat of the Grand Armada was not the end of humanity's demonstration. As Zephyrian ships powered down their weapons and prepared to surrender, Admiral Chen Wei activated one final system that had been hidden even from her own officers. Throughout human space, every star system that contained human colonies began to reveal additional defenses. What the galaxy had thought was humanity's full military strength had been only a fraction of their true capabilities. Hidden shipyards powered up and began launching new vessels. Secret research facilities revealed technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science. The message was clear. Humanity had not just prepared to defend Earth. They had prepared to defend every human world, every human station, every human ship. Any species that threatened one human colony would face the wrath of all humanity. As news of the Sol massacre spread through galactic communication networks, civilizations across known space realized that the balance of power had fundamentally changed. The species they had dismissed as harmless traders were actually the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen, and they had been hiding in plain sight for centuries, waiting patiently for someone to be foolish enough to threaten their families. The reckoning was complete. Humanity had revealed their true strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from dozens of civilizations sat in stunned silence as holographic displays showed the aftermath of what historians were already calling the Sol massacre. Where the mighty Zephyrian Grand Armada had once numbered over 1,000 ships, only scattered debris and emergency escape pods remained floating in Earth's orbital space. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the chamber, but she was no longer the quiet diplomat who had sat through decades of meetings while other species made decisions about humanity's future. Everyone in the chamber now knew exactly who and what she represented. The small human woman in her simple gray uniform was the voice of the galaxy's apex predator. The Zephyrian Empire has formally surrendered, Sarah announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Their remaining military forces have been taken into custody, and their government has agreed to pay reparations to the human colonies they attacked. The war is over. Council Speaker Morden, ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species, spoke into the silence. Ambassador Chen, the Council requires answers. How long has humanity been deceiving us about your true nature? Sarah looked around the chamber at faces that had once dismissed her people as insignificant traders. We have never deceived anyone, Speaker Morden. We told you we were a peaceful people who preferred trade to war. That is still true. We told you we would defend ourselves if attacked. We have done exactly that. But your military strength, protested the Vorthan representative, his tentacles writhing with agitation. Your fleets, your weapons, your fortifications. How did you hide such power from us? We didn't hide it, Sarah replied calmly. You simply chose not to see it. Every time we established a colony, we told you we were building defenses. Every time we expanded our territory, we warned you that we would protect our people. Every time we negotiated a treaty, we included clauses about our right to self-defense. You heard what you wanted to hear and ignored the rest. War Marshal Thekvar of the Krillian hegemony leaned forward in his seat. His massive reptilian form dwarfed most other beings in the chamber, but his voice carried a new tone of respect when he spoke. Ambassador, the Krillian hegemony wishes to formally request military training exchanges with humanity. We have much to learn from your tactical innovations. Sarah nodded. The offer will be considered, but understand, Marshal, that human military doctrine is based on principles your people may find difficult to accept. We do not fight for glory or honor. We fight to win, to survive, and to protect our families. Everything else is secondary. The Etherian Collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with colors that indicated deep emotion. The Collective requests a formal alliance with humanity. We have always been a peaceful species, but recent events have shown us that peace requires strength to maintain it. Agreed, Sarah replied. Immediately. Humanity has always believed that peaceful species deserve protection from those who would prey upon them. We are prepared to extend our defensive umbrella to any civilization that shares our values. Across the chamber, representatives began talking among themselves in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up as species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia suddenly found themselves repositioning their relationships with humanity. The small, quiet species they had ignored was now the most powerful military force in known space. On the distant world of Kepler 442, Governor Patricia Walsh stood in what had once been her colony's administration building. Now it was revealed as the command center for one of humanity's most sophisticated military installations. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the massive defensive platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment for 20 years. Her aide approached with a communication pad. "Governor, we're receiving formal diplomatic requests from 17 different species. They all want to establish embassies here." Patricia smiled. 3 months ago, they wouldn't return our calls when we needed trade agreements. Now they want embassies. How many are offering military alliances? All of them, ma'am. The Stellar Republic is offering exclusive technology sharing agreements. The Outer Rim Federation wants to hire human ships as convoy escorts. Even the pirate clans are requesting non-aggression pacts. The transformation was remarkable. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as harmless traitors to being courted by every major power in the galaxy. But Patricia understood that this change came with responsibilities that her people were only beginning to understand. On Earth, Admiral Chen Wei walked through the corridors of the Deep Space Command Center, observing her staff as they coordinated humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Display screens showed human ships throughout known space, no longer hiding their true nature. The age of deception was over. Now came the more difficult task of managing the consequences. "Admiral," her intelligence chief approached with a secure datapad. "We're receiving reports from our embassy on Nexus Prime. 17 species have requested defense treaties in the last 48 hours. The Vorthon Confederacy is offering to share their hyperdrive technology in exchange for protection from the Krillian hegemony. The Stellar Republic wants to purchase human weapon systems." Chen Wei studied the reports. "What about the smaller species, the ones who have been caught between the major powers?" "They're the most eager of all, ma'am. The Kepler Federation, the Outer Rim Trading Company, the Independent Worlds Alliance. They're all asking to be included in what they're calling the Human Protection Zone." This was exactly what Chen Wei had hoped would happen. For too long, the galaxy had been dominated by large military powers that bullied smaller civilizations. The revelation of humanity's true strength offered an opportunity to create a different kind of galactic order, one based on protection rather than predation. "Draft a proposal for the Galactic Council," she ordered. "A mutual defense agreement for any species that wants to join. Full protection from aggression in exchange for peaceful cooperation and respect for sentient rights." On the bridge of the ISO, Krillian battleship Razor's Edge, War Marshal Thekvar studied intelligence reports about human military capabilities with a mixture of admiration and concern. His species had always prided themselves on being the galaxy's greatest warriors. Now they were faced with the reality that they had been sharing space with predators far more dangerous than themselves. "Marshal," Submarshal Kretok approached, with a tactical analysis. "Our intelligence services have completed their evaluation of human combat effectiveness. The results are disturbing." Thekvar looked up from his datapad. "Disturbing how?" "Every engagement we've analyzed shows the same pattern. Humans don't just defeat their enemies, they completely outmaneuver them. Their tactical thinking is so far ahead of conventional warfare that most species can't even understand what they're doing until it's too late." The War Marshal nodded grimly. "What does the High Command recommend?" "Full alliance with humanity, Marshal. If we can't defeat them, we should join them. Better to be allied with the apex predator than to be prey for it." It was a hard truth for a proud warrior species to accept, but Thekvar had studied enough battle recordings to know it was the right decision. The Krillians had always believed that strength came from superior firepower and warrior courage. The humans had shown them that the greatest strength came from superior thinking and careful preparation. Back on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Sarah Chen met with a small group of representatives from species that most of the galaxy forgot existed, the Gentle Builders. who created beautiful crystal cities but had no weapons. The archive keepers, who maintained the galaxy's historical records but had no military force. The healers of Tau Ceti, whose medical knowledge was legendary, but who had never fought a war. "You are all welcome under humanity's protection," Sarah told them. "But understand what this means. We will defend you from aggression, but we will not fight your wars for you. We will protect your right to exist, but you must continue to contribute your unique gifts to galactic civilization." The representative of the Gentle Builders, a fragile crystalline being whose species had been conquered twice in the last century, spoke in tones like wind chimes. "What do you ask in return for this protection?" "Nothing that you are not already willing to give," Sarah replied. "Continue building your beautiful cities. Continue sharing your architectural knowledge. Simply exist and thrive as you always have. The galaxy is richer for your presence, and we will ensure that no one can take that away from you again." This was humanity's vision for the new galactic order. Not conquest or domination, but protection for those who needed it and cooperation with those who wanted it. The species that had hidden their true nature for 50 years were now using their revealed strength to create a safer galaxy for everyone. But not everyone was happy with this new arrangement. In the shadowy corners of galactic space, older powers began to plan and scheme. The Void Syndicate, mysterious beings from beyond the galactic rim, watched human expansion with growing concern. The Ancient Ones, who had ruled parts of the galaxy before most current species had achieved spaceflight, began to stir from their long slumber. Admiral Chen Wei knew that humanity's revelation of their military strength was not an ending. It was a beginning. There were threats in the galaxy that even humanity had not yet encountered, ancient powers that would not be impressed by human technology or tactics. The real test of human strength was yet to come. But for now, the galaxy was learning to live with a new reality. The quiet species from the small blue world had become the dominant military force in known space. They had achieved this not through conquest or aggression, but through patience, preparation, and the willingness to defend what they valued most. The moment when humans revealed their true military force had passed. The galaxy had trembled in silence as it realized what had been hiding among them all along. Now came the more difficult task of building a future where that strength could be used not for war but for peace. And in the depths of space, on ships that no longer needed to hide their true nature, human crews looked out at the stars with quiet satisfaction. They had kept their promise to their ancestors. Humanity would never again be helpless in the face of aggression. The children of Earth were finally free to explore the galaxy without fear, protected by the strength their parents had built in secret across the generations. The new galactic order had begun, and humanity stood ready to shepherd it toward a brighter future for all sentient beings.